Feedback. Well, we're just gonna have to live with the feedback, I think. Can you hear us okay? All right.
Yep.
Amber, would you like to try and take roll?
Bill,
Present.
Byron,
Here.
Nate.
He's here. I can see him.
Cindy,
Here.
Kara,
Here.
Rita.
Here.
She raised her hand.
She raised
Andy, we're getting feedback from you for some reason. You might try muting and then unmuting.
That was it, huh?
Carl,
Here.
Candy,
Here.
Mandy,
Here.
Ruben,
Here.
Cassie, Kalea,
Here.
and I believe I saw Commissioner Russell there as our liaison.
All right. So since we had that fun getting started, I'll just not have. That made everybody happy, but Vanessa has a housekeeping and travel update. So I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa.
Yeah, I think we just experienced the housekeeping. So if, this is hybrid, this mic picks up very well, so don't have side conversations because they do get picked up. If you are a committee member, we ask that you have your camera on, and you can feel free to speak up. You can also raise your hand with the raise hand function, which is either a hand at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, depending on which version you're using. And don't forget to unraise your hand. And if your hand is raised and we don't see it, just speak up because sometimes we miss it. And as a committee member, just feel free to speak. You don't need to, no one needs to yell. You can just use regular voices with this. Also, a thank you to everyone who is online because this means that you had to go through the registration process. You guys are our test, our guinea pigs for the ability to stream these for others to watch in real time. So thank you for that. I hope the experience was not difficult. And then quick travel update. And I sent everybody a message on this, but just as a reminder to everyone that we have changed over our travel coordinator now is MJ Griffin. I always say Griffith. She probably goes crazy because of it. MJ Griffin. She was CC'd on that email, and you may have interacted with her before, but she will be the one who's doing all the hotel reservations and any and all questions about travel. So if there's a car rental, if there's mileage, if there's anything, she is your go-to person. I also attached in that email, I think it's not a one-pager, I believe it's a two-pager. But it's an advisory committee travel document that's meant to sort of more succinctly lay out all the things you need to do, what the agency can and cannot reimburse, things like that. So I think that should be a good reference document for everyone. In the summary of that document is email MJ. If you're going to travel, email MJ. If you're going to travel and you want reimbursement, if you just are going to travel, then you probably don't need it. But if you want reimbursement, I would reach out to her first because she can take care of everything in such a way that reimbursement is easy. As you know, we are the state, so things take a minute, and there's always 6 more steps than you thought there would be. I say that with love. So MJ is your person. Take a look at that document we made, and then. There was a third. Oh, I know that there were some hiccups this time for travel that were completely unrelated to MJ. They were entirely related to the state booking site. So if you experienced this, I'm sorry. It is not reflective of MJ. It's really just, I believe, the state hazing her on her first time having to book travel for a committee. But everything I think should be mostly worked out by now. I think Hotel Engine got it right. And that's it.
All right. Next on the agenda is discussion and possible action to amend the minutes of April 1st. Were there any concerns as y'all the amendments? Read the meeting minutes? Hearing none, we can move on. Vanessa and Abby, do we have any other public comments in what were mentioned? And does anyone else want to speak? No? Okay, perfect. So Mike, the next one's yours on staff report on education and enforcement matters, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. This is the disciplinary action report. What's occurred since y'all last met. We had one advisor letter and one agreed order.
All right. Any questions for Mike Malloy on this? Ruben?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on that first item, was it only one student that took the course, or this is just one that was affected by the fact that they didn't finish off with the certificate and so on?
There was one student that was impacted.
Okay, so the second question I have is, how difficult can it be if you only have one student to not report it?
There was more than one student in the class. It was just one student was impacted.
Oh, okay.
Class. Yeah.
I didn't hear you well.
Sorry
Didn't hear
about
you well. The next question. This particular provider, is this the first time that they've had this situation?
I'd have to do a double check, but I believe so, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, moving on to agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed changes to the principles of real estate 1, law of agency course approval forms. And those items are in our package for today. These were proposed by the commission at the May commission meeting based on our recommendation. We have received one written comment that is in material. And it's up to us to decide whether to make any changes to the approval forms. And if we do, then it's at the August commission meeting, or recommend the forms for adoption at the August commission. So the public comment is on the. I'll open it up for.
Mr. Chair, I have a few that I'd like to make.
Yes, sir.
Please. I was looking at the pass rates that are on Trek's website this morning. And what I'd like to do is comment on principles 2, the content outline for that. And specifically the math section, which we've recommended to change to 20 minutes. I was on the Trek website this morning looking at the pass rate for the state exam section, and math is the third of the 8. It's the third lowest pass. What is it, like 73.9%, versus there are 4 other topics that are higher than that. And I just don't think that we should allot 20 or 30 minutes is what our subtotal is on principles 2, that we should allot only 30 minutes for math. I think we should leave it the way that it is with what do we have, 200 minutes or something like that on there, on the way that the qualifying course approval form has it now. This past week, I actually taught a math class for the provider that I work for. I can't for the life of me understand why somebody would take a 30-hour SAE class in math. It's a pretty grueling course. So I asked the students that were in the room, some of them were broker candidates, and they're taking it because they need 900 hours. And I get that. And then there were some students in the room who were actually taking SAE classes and in their first renewal. And the majority of them said that they were taking it because they needed help with math, flat out. That's what I need help with. So I spent a few minutes at a break talking about that with the students and said, there's apps to help you, whether you're doing prorations or other calculations like that. And the pushback with my comment was, yeah, but sometimes we need to explain things to people, our clients and other customers. Of course, and that included things like what an RMLO would do with qualifying ratios and things like that. And I just don't think that with 30 minutes of math that we have on our proposed draft is sufficient enough to allow people to learn what they might need to talk to customers, clients, the public about. So what we have here, personally, I can't recommend this to the Real Estate Commission. And I think we should leave the principles 2, which would leave principles 1 the way it is written already. And not recommend that Trek approve these 2 documents, principles 1 and principles 2.
Can I add just a little to that too?
Oh, please do.
So to me, real estate math and real estate financing principles are kind of one and the same. And we are allotting 275. Can we not just combine? I mean, because that's over 300 now minutes. That's going to be allotted for math and the financing part of it.
Sure.
That was like my comment as well, because like this may be 30 minutes in principle 2, but then you're taking the financing, which is going to be the whole math portion of it.
Well, it could be. I mean, at least it would take the financing part. But what about things like tax prorations or about converting square feet into acreage or in commercial real estate where they're doing volume for warehouses and stuff like that. I don't see that 30 minutes would allot enough time to be able to even do anything like that. And then one of the things, and I talked to a couple of our writers about it, and they said, well, when they're putting a class together and allotting time for quizzes and scenarios, that the quiz itself would take at least half that time away, just for one little chapter. And so just for a classroom perspective, then it just wasn't something that they felt that they could manage.
Okay, other comments? Well, I know we worked on this with a subcommittee that many of you were a part of, and we discussed this at length. We keep coming back to the same hang up on math. So what would be the recommendation?
I recommend leaving it the way that it is already with the principles 1 and principles 2 as written, with the course approval forms the way they are right now.
Just to be clear, make sure I understand, your recommendation is to keep the 2 that are currently in use.
Yes, ma'am.
And just
Yeah.
eliminate the
Eliminate
2 revisions.
Yes, the 2 revisions for both principles 1 and principles 2.
Sorry, not just in regard to the math portion, like just leaving it all the same.
Well, yeah, because if you change this particular section, well, that's going to affect principles 1 because
Gotcha, okay.
we built those together. I was part of that subcommittee that did it. And I'm personally backing off of my original position on that.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, can we hear from some other members of the committee who worked on this? I'd like to get some more feedback from them.
absolutely. Ruben, you were on this, sir. Would you like to speak to this?
Well, I'm not changing my mind. We did put a lot of work into it, and there was a lot of discussion on it, and I'm comfortable with what we submitted, and I just don't think at this late in the game that we should be changing once again. So I'm just going to stay with where I was from the very beginning.
Okay, and Mike, were you on that committee also?
I was not, that's why I'm asking.
Okay, I think we had,
Well, Chuck Jacobus was on that.
yeah,
And yourself?
And he was the one that really wrote the two drafts. And as one course is what we were looking at to begin with, which was not approved by the Real Estate Commission. I thought that maybe we had something that was workable. But in dividing these back into two classes, I don't think that it stands alone the way that
Right.
principles do, which is why I've changed my position on it.
okay, any other comments?
I know Chuck Jacobus isn't here, but trusting the work that he put into it, and after Ruben's comments, it would be a recommendation to go with the changes as they've been made.
Okay. We find ourselves in a little quandary here.
And,
Yes,
On the revised section, it says real estate math and calculator for 15 minutes, fraction and percentage for 15 minutes. Are we saying we're adding, because like, it seems like they kind of narrow it down to just calculator and percentage and fractions. Are we gonna, is that what we decided on for the basic part? So that's why they just wanted to cover 30 minutes of it, and perhaps to the commercial and all these other ones, you know, throwing over to, not throwing, but, you know, passing it over to the finance portion for to deal with the math instead of, you know, covering everything in principle. Maybe that was the purpose of it. It reduced down to 30 minutes. Because if it's only just for calculator and fractions and percentages, then 30 minutes should be sufficient enough to spend on that time.
so when we met, we reallocated a whole bunch of time throughout the rest of the courses. So we would have to undo all of that. And I understand the public comment, and Brian, I understand your comment. So I guess we need to see what the committee wants to do. I was on that subcommittee. I do not want to undo the work, but if that's the vote of everybody, that's what we'll do.
So you need oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask one question that was brought up in the public comment about a listing agreement. That's not even a truck agreement.
Yeah, we don't do
So, right. And so I was a little confused why it was even discussed in the public comment section. Or
couldn't begin to answer why he put that in his public comment.
So you'll want a motion either way.
Okay, we have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I motion that we adopt the changes as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we'll move that forward.
Right, that'll go, so that'll.
Okay, perfect. Jen, the next one is yours, agenda item 8, discussion and possible action regarding course proctoring requirements.
Okay. I'm really just gonna get this one and agenda item 9 started. Both of these came as recommendations from committee members here. And so included in your materials are the rule language that talks about the exam proctoring requirements. And as I understand it, this committee would like to consider what those are and perhaps make recommendations for changes. I believe, Leah, was it you that brought this up, or was it you that brought
I'm
up?
the next one. I brought up
Please.
number 9.
Was it Mike? Mike, did you?
It might have
Mike or
been.
Bill?
It
Mike
was,
did.
Yeah,
was you? Oh, okay.
could be Mike also. I think we both had.
yeah.
So I can summarize real quick, well, basically what the rule language is. These are the final exams for qualifying real estate courses. And the proctoring requirements currently are that the exam be proctored by a member of the provider, faculty, or staff, or a third-party proctor acceptable to the commission, who is present at the test site or able to monitor the student through the use of technology, has positively identified that the student taking the examination is the student registered for the course. The following are examples of third-party proctors: employees at official testing or learning or tutoring centers, librarians at a school, a university, or a public library, college or university administrators, faculty, or academic advisors, clergy who are affiliated with a specific temple, synagogue, mosque, or church, and education officers of a military installation or correctional facility. Those are the examples that are written into the rule. They are examples, but not, this is an including but not limited to statement. And so I'll open it up then, Bill, if you want to tell us what your thoughts were.
Well, and then I'm going to go to Mike right next, but my thoughts are, and I've always been, there's been a lot of concern on this, and it's very difficult to get people proctored.
Okay.
And trying to pass, even get to take the test, getting them proctored has always been a challenge for us in the field that are end users of the students, especially when they're taking the courses online.
Okay.
They still have to pass a state and national exam that is under rigorous security procedures. So if they were to cheat to pass an SAE or qualifying education course, they wouldn't be able to cheat to get past the other, presumably. So I did want to bring it up to see if there was any way to change the rule, because it seems that we're very restrictive on something that does have a safeguard, pretty good safeguard to take the state and the national exam. So that was my concern. Mike, did you also have concerns?
It would be an equal concern. I could almost just say what you said verbatim. The providers going through the unnecessary step, and more importantly, the students who have to ensure that they're being watched by somebody to take an exam, that in this case, it's multiple times. They're having to do it for each qualifying course to just then be proctored again later. It seems like over redundancy on their part. And I don't see the necessity of the proctor requirement at the end of each qualifying course.
Okay, let's hear from other members of the committee now that the rule and you've heard the concern. How did the rest of the committee feel? The rest of the committee is very quiet.
I concur with this sentiment. I think that, sometimes it just feels a little bit like overkill. You've verified and verified and verified some more. And so I definitely agree with the sentiment of Mike that you're sharing.
Okay. Does anybody on the committee disagree with that sentiment?
This is strictly for just online courses.
Correct, because in the classroom you would have, there's always an instructor there watching.
Yeah.
I actually wouldn't put it just for online personally. The real estate licensing exam courses those are digital exams. They're having to take on a computer. And so if a in-person provider wanted to be able to assign a digital exam to a student that they take at a time that's best for them, I wouldn't even think it would have to be in front of a proctor. It shouldn't matter. It's no different than an online student taking the exam. And so essentially they could be in the classroom for the full 30 hours, sent home and take their exam on their computer when they're ready. And it would be no different than taking the real estate licensing exam through the computer, through those means, or them taking it in the classroom. I don't see putting a restriction.
Except having a proctor.
Except having the proctor, yeah.
Okay. Question for Jennifer, Vanessa, or Abby, how do we change a rule?
Yeah, that's, we would probably gather all the well, I probably should let
I
you
like,
guys
I like
answer.
where you're headed.
We would gather input from the committee and then draft rule language to bring back to you at a next meeting.
Why are we even here? That's perfect. Don't
I'm
matter.
sorry.
No,
I'm
no, no.
just
I'm
joking.
totally
Covered
kidding.
in
That's
legal
great.
too.
Yeah, no, but no, Jen's exactly right.
And I will just share with you guys, this rule language actually came from another version of ESAC many years ago. So you're right, it's in your purview to discuss. And yeah, there's nothing to say that after going through this experience of requiring the proctoring, you can't come back and make a different recommendation.
Okay.
Time to change.
So I assume we need a motion to move forward. Do we have a motion?
Well, I have a question. Is there any type, do you want to just remove the proctoring requirement altogether? Is there somewhere in between you want to fall? Either is fine, but I'm just curious.
I think they need to pass the test, without a doubt. The proctoring has been restricted probably more because online became more prevalent than what it was prior to when the rule was passed.
Right.
Then we had a worldwide pandemic that made it very difficult. So I'm open on that, but they have to still pass a state and a national exam, and I would think they would have to pass an exam on each qualifying education course.
Sure. Any ID requirements or?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think that we could probably land in the middle a little bit with regards to some sort of ID verification throughout the exam, or, ensuring that person still taking the exam. There's plenty of ways to do that. And so, you want to have some level of checks and balances, but also allow for the ease of use, like what Mike was explaining. So I would be a fan of having some sort of checks and balances with regards to an online exam.
Yeah, we already have and we're about to discuss it for live broadcast, but we already have the positively identifying a student. We certainly don't want to remove that. We want to make sure who's coming to class is who they say they are, and who's taking their test is who they say they are. But that's a separate issue because we're already requiring ID. And so I would say for the proctor, I would make a motion that the proctoring requirement is removed from the requirement.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to remove the proctoring requirement from the rules in a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries, and I guess that motion goes back to you to draft the rules.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll bring you language at the next one to vote for, if you love it, or you want to make changes to it, whatever, then you would vote to recommend to go for proposal in
January.
November.
Okay.
Wow.
And I'm sorry, I do have a question about it. Does that remove any, is it just the online courses that would remove proctoring, or would that include brick and mortar as well?
My proposal is to remove the proctoring requirement, period.
Overall,
You're just gonna let brick and mortar be able to test separately if they so desire.
they could go home and take it that way.
Take it on a computer, just like they would for the licensing exam.
Okay. Let's move to number 9, discussion and possible action regarding the photo identification requirement for live broadcasts. Again, Jen.
Sure. So right now, the practice, by default of the policy is that people have been required to basically just hold up, and providers, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've got this. Hold up their driver's license or some type of photo ID to ensure that they're the person who's in the class, who's registered for the class. I don't think we've come up with any other mechanisms for online student ID or verification, unless somebody else has something that they've thought of. But I think that's what Kalea wanted to talk about in this meeting.
Yeah, so I'd like to just come from a place of encouragement on this topic. I don't know that we need to make any real changes, but the intention behind the photo ID requirement is to maintain the integrity of the educational process. And live broadcast rules follow that of live courses, like Jen just said, with regard to the student verification. However, the main difference is that live broadcast courses are backed with technology. And when they're done right, they can be really efficient. And with the current state of technology, there are numerous ways to verify a student's identity in an online environment. Things like biometric verification, two-factor authentication, the continuous identity verification throughout the course, among many other examples, like we just discussed in the previous agenda item. And so while we don't want to see standards go down, as the rule is there for a reason, I would just advocate for TREC staff and all of us as a team as we innovate to continue to be open-minded and allow for just creative solutions with regards to providers having technology-backed verification solutions, especially for live broadcast courses that can both uphold the rule, but may be different than just physically showing the ID. Excuse me. I had a conversation with a student who was in a class the other day, and the instructor was like, "Oh, I know everybody here. We don't need to show our IDs." Us personally, we have a whole setup, situated that we built through COVID, where the student goes into one room and holds up their ID, and then they go into the room, and there's just it's cumbersome. And more so, I'm not advocating that we take the rule out. Like I said, I think it's there for a reason, but I do think that there's just other ways that providers can easily and probably more efficiently verify student identification and ensuring that that student is who they are throughout the duration of the course in a live broadcast environment. So that's just sort of my stance on that. And I think that as providers come up with those types of solutions, so long as it upholds the rule and is amicable to TREC, that we explore those options.
So then would you be proposing we add something to the rule to allow forms of other than photo ID?
That would be amazing. I would be an advocate for that, yes.
Okay, discussion from the rest of the committee.
Is it as simple as making it ambiguous to the point where providers ensure that they positively ID the students by any means acceptable by the commission? Whereas it doesn't have to be an ID card, it could be another. I could see as an association, you already have them in your system. There's easy ways for you to do it. If you're a proprietary provider, you're not going to have that, but you could come up with some other means where you're not having to put your ID out there. I would agree that the ID card thing, we probably should move past that. If we've already removed all of the agents' information off of the TREC's website where it's visible, and that was for a reason, then putting their ID card on cameras where someone else can see it, it's probably time for that to go as well.
Exactly. So I don't know, Jen, if maybe, taking this type of thing, could the staff come up with a change to the rule that would, or maybe define what is amenable to TREC per the rule? But it is a little bit, it feels very dinosauric in the moment when you're like, hold up your ID and, cover your information and let me see your face. There are definite technologies out there that are much more secure as well as efficient.
Sure. Yeah, I don't actually think that the rule language is restrictive in that regard. I think that the way that it's written, you could present a concept to us that we could review and then determine whether it is acceptable to the commission, so to speak.
Can I challenge that for a second? 'Cause
Sure.
The rule says check the photo identification of each student at class sign up and when signing in for each subsequent meeting of the class. So it's pretty restrictive.
It says check the photo ID.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I think that I think rule language could change to allow for that, just to ensure, ensure the student identification. Verify that the student is the student who took the course and is registered for the course. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I didn't mean to. step
Yeah,
on
I
that.
mean, and if a provider is audited in that regard and has, the ability to show the process and how that person was verified, similar to that of, any other type of audit, I think that should suffice for the rule. But it is pretty restrictive and it's, like I said, just not an efficient way, especially because online courses or live broadcast courses are backed by this type of technology.
So if we said something similar to the provider must check photo identification or use an acceptable method approved by the commission to verify the identification.
Yeah.
Byron, you started to say something.
Yeah, so then if it says approved by the commission, then would the provider have to show the commission, this is the system that we're using? And then, so there's an additional then application type process of here's our verification process that we're using, and then education approves it? Or is it up to the provider to ensure that they are determining the identification of the students, and then if there is an audit, prove it later?
Go either way. I mean, typically right now we review the process ahead of time.
What would
But
that
if you
look
wanted to put it in, as a part of the audit, we could do that too. Typically, it's not something we look at with every course. We'll look at a course delivery mechanism initially, and then at that point you tell us, like, what does your enrollment agreement look like? How do I log in and act as though I'm taking the course and check for all of these things? How do you verify student identity? That's one of the things that we ask. So the providers tell us.
we use a particular platform if we're going to
Exactly.
do some kind of biometric.
Yes.
But then that platform wouldn't have to be approved by you initially before any courses are offered?
No, it would be in conjunction with the course
In conjunction with the
application.
course.
But then you would do it once, and then, with our process, we don't look at a course delivery mechanism for the same provider for the same delivery mechanism over and over and
Every
over
time.
again. Right. We'll do it once with an initial approval, and then we'll probably circle back in, at multiple years and look at it again. So it's not something you would have to resubmit over and over to us.
Yeah, okay. I agree with Kalia that it is a cumbersome process that's used today.
Mhm.
That with technology, there has to be another way, but in putting an additional step on the provider may be prohibitive as well. In, every class that they put out there, do they need
Right.
to have an approval of the identification process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a staff suggestion on how they choose to manage that verification, but I wouldn't recommend that we make any real changes to that necessarily because they're already doing it now. And if you're not having to do it for every course, once the provider's been approved as that's their method of verification, then it doesn't seem like it would be an additional process necessary, but I'll lean on Jen for that.
So maybe in changing the words to verify the identification of each student at class, right? Instead
Mhm.
of check the photo identity.
Right.
Be as simple as doing so.
Ruben, sir?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 2 weeks ago, I took a course at the association here in San Antonio. You walk into the building, there's a table there, cafeteria table. It's got some forms there. There's a young lady there that says, which course, tell her which course is, see your driver's license. You sign in, and then people walk away. You walk down the hall to the last class and walk in. No one's asking you, are you here for this class? Who are you? Just sit down, take the class. So from the time you go in there with your license and sign your name in, no one knows what happens to that person after that. Mike could have walked in on my behalf and taken the course. There's no test. There's hardly anything that anyone's checking once you check in. And I just thought it was kind of funny because it had to change. They used to do it when you walked into the classroom, there was someone sitting there. When you walk in, you hand them, they sign in, they sit down. Now you know it's that person. But it's different now. And I just kind of said, well, okay, I guess that's their system. And if it works for them, it works for them. But at the same time, there are people who I've talked to who have said, yeah, I went and took a course and I really didn't want to be there. I was hoping I could just go sign in and have someone come in and sit in for me while I go out and show properties. Since they're not given the final course exam anyway, no one's checking to see if it's really me in the classroom after they checked in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, to respond to you respectfully, Mr. Pena, that what level of complaints are we seeing on this? You know, is there data around the type of people that are doing that, you know, those bad apples? And so, you know, I think that we would have to just be careful to not restrict to the lowest common denominator, you know, and I think that there's a little bit of that, you know, it seems like the technology and honestly the live broadcast and online is very comprehensive and very sort of has the ability to ensure that that person is there, right? We offer in Austin hundreds of courses to hundreds of students, and I would say that 0.0001% maybe somebody sat in for somebody else, you know. So just to respond in that manner with regards to setting policy and rules at the higher level to allow for the maximum ability for those technologies to be there, I think is where my argument was, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks for bringing it up. So we're looking for a motion on this topic. No one made a motion yet. We beat it around the bush, but we haven't made a motion yet.
I guess I move to, and y'all totally edit this, but direct staff to provide a recommendation to amend the rule of reviewing photo IDs at the onset of courses, live broadcast courses. Do we want to be that restrictive?
I don't think we want to say live broadcast,
Right.
just courses. The provider to provide, I guess
I'm not trying to remove the verification. It's the type of verification or the way it's done, I guess, is the, you know, I'm not trying, I think that, you know, verification is a good thing. It's just that way that it's done is restrictive to actually showing a photo ID. It's that portion.
Why don't we try this? Where it currently says check the photo identification of each student at class sign up and when signing in for each meeting, why don't we say ensure the verification of each student?
If you know what might be helpful is if you just recommend us to look into it, and we can kind of work with the rule language, but sometimes when you try to wordsmith the.
That's what, yeah. Yeah. Help me out.
All right, I think we have a quasi motion from floor that says for staff to review the rule language, and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just for clarification, Mr. Chair, so will that be brought back to us at the next meeting, just for us to review it, to look at it?
I'm hearing yes, so we'll see it again in October.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, I think we made good progress there. And speaking of the next meeting, our next meeting dates are Monday, October 7th at 10 a.m. and Monday, January 6th at 10 a.m. Are those dates good for everybody?
I won't be able to be at the October 8th meeting.
October 7th?
Yeah, that day.
Either will I. I'm traveling the
Me
first week
neither.
of October, but I can't reschedule a meeting because I'm traveling.
I won't be here either.
Wait, so how many is that are saying that it doesn't work for them?
3 so far.
3?
I'll come in on Zoom, but
Do we have an alternate? Are we?
Alternate.
We'd
day.
already set that one, actually. It's already on the website.
Okay.
I can Zoom in, so that'd be 2 that won't be here.
You don't have to zoom.
I can. I'll be at an Airstream rally.
Okay.
I'll have my Starlink. I can.
I was
Hey,
kidding.
I zoomed in from Korea.
Yeah. I mean,
That was.
So you did not have
Midnight,
to.
but it was okay.
all right. So if we'll have a quorum, then it sounds like. And how about Monday, January 6th? Any problem with that? All right. Hearing no problems, I move to adjourn our meeting.
Great meeting. Thanks, everybody.
All
Have
right,
a
thank
great
you.
week.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Let's go ahead and end this one and then